Dear listeners, I hope you're all doing well. Even when I'm unwell, I still try my best to bring you great content. However, I feel a bit disappointed to say that many of you only listen to the stories but don't subscribe to the channel or leave comments. I truly hope you will support me, stay with me, and subscribe so I don't feel discouraged. So, let's begin today's next incident. She said it casually, like it didn't carry weight, like it wasn't the kind of sentence that quietly breaks something permanent. If you don't like me partying with my ex, that's your problem. I looked at her for a second longer than usual, not because I was shocked, but because I was trying to understand if she actually believed what she just said. You're right. And that was the moment everything changed, even though neither of us moved. We were standing in the kitchen of our townhouse in Scottsdale, Arizona, the kind of place that looked perfect in listing photos, but felt strangely temporary once you lived in it. Her name was Sloane Harrington. Mine is Carter Whitfield. And up until that moment, I thought we were building something stable. Not perfect, but stable enough to invest time, trust, and future plans into. Sloane leaned against the marble counter, arms crossed, her expression steady but defensive, like she had already decided she wasn't going to bend on this. I'm not doing anything wrong, she added. I nodded slowly, not arguing, not raising my voice, which seemed to confuse her more than if I had reacted emotionally. That's not what I said, I replied. But internally, something was shifting, because it wasn't about whether she was doing something technically wrong. It was about what she chose to prioritize when it mattered. Sloane had always been socially magnetic. People gravitated toward her in a way that made rooms feel different when she entered. That was part of what drew me to her in the first place. But it also meant she never had to question her choices the way most people do. If something felt good to her, she assumed it was justified. And if someone else had a problem with it, that became their insecurity to manage. Her ex was named Nolan Prescott. They had dated for 3 years before breaking up 6 months before I met her. The story she told me was clean and simple. They had grown apart. No drama. No lingering feelings. Just two adults moving in different directions. At least, that's how it sounded. But Nolan was still very present. Not in obvious ways at first. Just mentions. Then messages. Then occasional meetups that were always described as harmless. I didn't push it early on, because trust, I believed, had to be given before it could be earned. But over time, the pattern became harder to ignore. And that night was the first time I actually said something about it. Not accusing, not controlling, just expressing that it made me uncomfortable. And her response wasn't curiosity or reassurance. It was dismissal. If you don't like it, that's your problem. And I said, you're right. But what I meant was something she didn't catch. That was my problem, and I was going to solve it. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Sloane was still asleep, her phone resting face down on the nightstand. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to, because the issue wasn't proof. It was clarity, and for the first time, I had it. At work, I sat in my office overlooking Camelback Mountain, trying to focus on numbers that suddenly felt irrelevant. I ran a financial advisory firm. My job was literally helping people make rational decisions about their future, and yet, in my own life, I had been negotiating emotional ambiguity like it was acceptable. That realization was uncomfortable, because it meant I had allowed something I wouldn't advise anyone else to tolerate. Around noon, Sloane texted me, "Hey, sorry if I sounded harsh last night." I stared at the message longer than necessary. Not because I didn't appreciate the apology, but because it felt incomplete. There was no acknowledgement of the actual issue, just the tone. "I understand," I replied. That was it. No extra reassurance. No emotional questioning. Just clarity. That evening, she mentioned she was going out. "Nolan's having a birthday thing," she said, almost casually. I nodded. "Okay." She paused, waiting for more. "You're not going to say anything?" she asked. I shook my head. "No." And that unsettled her more than any argument would have. Before we go further, pause for a second and think about this. If you were in Carter's position, would you speak up again, or would you step back and let actions reveal everything? Because what feels like silence on the outside is often a decision on the inside. Sloane left around 8. She looked incredible, which wasn't unusual, but there was something intentional about it that night. Like she wanted to be seen. Not just socially, but specifically. And I didn't stop her. I didn't question her. I didn't check her location or send follow-up texts. Instead, I sat in the quiet of the house and started making decisions. Real ones, not emotional reactions. Practical ones. I reviewed the lease. My name was the primary. I looked at the joint expenses. I separated what was mine from what was shared. I opened my laptop and began adjusting things that had been intertwined, not out of anger, but out of alignment. Because relationships don't collapse in loud moments. They shift quietly when priorities stop matching. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from Sloan. Staying out late. Don't wait up. I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to prove something, but because there was nothing left to clarify. She walked in at 2:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I was still awake, not waiting, just finishing what I had started. She dropped her heels near the door, slightly louder than necessary, like she was testing if I would react. I didn't. She walked into the living room and saw me sitting there. "You're still up?" she asked. "Yeah." There was a pause. Then she smiled slightly. "It was fun." I nodded. "I'm glad." And that's when her expression shifted, because something felt off to her. Not hostile, not cold, just resolved. "What's going on with you?" she asked. I closed my laptop. "Nothing's going on," I said calmly. "That's not true," she replied. "You're being weird." I looked at her, not with frustration, but with a kind of clarity she hadn't seen from me before. "I just agreed with you," I said. "You said it's my problem." She frowned slightly. "Okay, and I handled it." She stared at me, trying to understand what that meant. "How?" she asked. I stood up, not dramatically, just steadily. I removed myself from the part that made a problem. Her confusion turned into tension. "What does that mean, Carter?" "It means I'm not going to compete for a position in my own relationship," I said. Silence filled the room. Not loud, but heavy. "You're overreacting," she said quickly. And that was the first time I saw it clearly. Not her behavior, but her expectation. She expected access without accountability, connection without adjustment. And when that wasn't challenged, it became her normal. "I'm not reacting," I said. "I'm deciding." She crossed her arms again, but this time it wasn't defensive. It was uncertain. "So what are you saying?" I held her gaze, not angry, not hurt, just honest. "I'm saying I'm stepping back." Her voice lowered slightly. "You're breaking up with me?" I paused. Because technically, yes. But emotionally, it felt more like I was just aligning with reality. "I'm choosing something that makes sense," I said. And for the first time that night, she didn't have a response ready. Before we go further, think about this moment carefully. When someone finally sets a boundary without anger, why does it often feel more serious than any argument? Because calm decisions are harder to reverse. Sloan sat down slowly, like the weight of the situation had finally caught up to her. "You're really doing this?" she asked. I nodded. Yes. There was no shouting. No dramatic exit. Just two people realizing they wanted different things at the same time. The next few days were quiet. Logistical. She moved some of her things out. I stayed consistent. Not cold. Not distant. Just steady. Nolan didn't come up again. Not because he stopped existing, but because he was no longer relevant to my decisions. A week later, Sloan called me. Not about logistics. Not about belongings. Just to talk. "I didn't think you'd actually walk away," she admitted. I wasn't surprised, because people rarely expect consequences when there haven't been any before. "I didn't walk away," I said. I stepped towards something that made sense. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something honest. "I thought you'd adjust." And that sentence explained everything. Not just about her, but about us. Because relationships don't fail from one moment. They fail when one person keeps adjusting and the other never has to. "I did adjust," I replied. "Just not in the direction you expected." We didn't get back together. Not because it was impossible, but because it no longer aligned. And sometimes, that's the most honest ending you can have.